first 8 years of my life were probably the most memorable ones. I loved most of it. People respected me. I had the love of my parents. I was sheltered. I was spoiled. I had a great life, right? All the way up to 9, right? When I got to 9, I was in roughly around primary 5, primary 6, and that's when all hell broke loose. That's when things started changing for me. I was bullied, primarily because, how many of you guys know what stammering is? Right? Who knows what stammering is, right? So I used to have a stammer, not a very heavy one, but I used to have quite a stammer, and I wouldn't be able to, particularly with the letter M, I wasn't able to say my. I used to stop at my, right? And on top of that, I was about yay high. I was a lot smaller than other kids, right? I was skinnier than all the other kids, and I was the favorite subject of all the bullies in my school. And I went to a school back then called Safal, right? I don't know if you guys have heard of Safal, right? Right? And I went to that school, and I remember the very first memory of me doing things in life was I had this huge obsession with Batman. How many of you guys like Batman here? Right. I'm blown away by the idea of Batman, right? I don't know how to explain this to you, but Batman is not just cooler than other superheroes. There's something about him that makes him so much more attractive than other heroes. You know what it is? It's the fact that no matter which situation Batman gets into, he can die, right? There's death. You know why? Because if you look at the Justice League, you've got this dude who can swim in water at the speed of light. You've got this guy who's from another planet who turns kind of jelly when he sees a green rock, right? You've got this other woman who can pick up, trees and planets and throw them at people, right? Which is like most women in this room anyways, right? Right? Am I right? Right? Women equality all the way through, right? But seriously, look at the Justice League. Everyone has amazing potential and powers that are fairly fictional. What does Batman have? Like in the recent Justice League movie, what powers do you have, Batman? I'm rich. That's all, right? But go deeper than Batman. When I was a kid, I loved Batman, right? I loved Batman. And that's when things changed. I was living a beautiful life all the way up to 8, and in my 9th year, there was a party in school, and I went to school dressed up like this, Batman, because I loved the fact that Batman took risks, and he was just a normal man doing whatever, And he could be hurt, he could be shot, he could be killed, but he still had the courage to do things that other heroes sometimes wouldn't do. Think about it, guys. Superman goes into a situation that's difficult. What's the most he's gonna lose? Nothing. Come on, man. The guy's eyes are bulletproof, right? You've seen the movies, right? Things bounce off him. Batman shows up. He has to talk about will. He has to talk about detectives. He has to be talking about strength, martial arts, everything, right? Everything is hard work for Batman. And then he makes it look great. That's the ideology I had as a kid growing up, that I want to be someone that proves and struggles his way through. Because I gotta tell you guys, growing up wasn't so easy. At home, I was a superstar. But when I used to leave home and I used to play in the park, kids used to pick on me because I was different. I had mixed parentage. I was born in Malaysia, but I didn't look Malay. I was something else, but I wasn't. People didn't figure out what I was, I was smaller, scrawnier than everyone. All that happened, and people used to always kind of feel like, he's not one of us. Have you ever lived your life kind of feeling like you want to be part of the group, but you're not? Do you know what I'm talking about, guys? Yeah. You want to be part of something in life, but no matter how hard you try, you feel like they just don't accept you. Do you know what I mean? And that's when the downhill spiral of my life began. Because by the time I was 8 years old, I was trying to be someone that I wasn't. I showed up at a party with a Batman suit. You know what happened, guys? A group of guys got together and ripped my costume apart. I literally left with the cape ripped apart. I was bruised. I still remember, my mom tells me that I had about 10, 12 bruises all over my body because I was bashed up. because I showed up as Batman. And they made fun of me, they beat me, and I'm gonna go back to this slide. And one of them even urinated on me. On my costume, my favorite costume, right? And that's when my heart broke. And you know, for a moment, I cursed Batman. I said, I thought, because I was a kid, I thought if I put on the suit, you know, I would stand for what Batman stands for. I'd be great, you know, I'd be someone who people would respect. And instead, I got peed on, right? Instead, people said, dude, what's wrong with you? Why are you so different? And you know what? I abandoned all these hopes and dreams then. I stopped trying to be Batman, I stopped trying to be myself, and you know what I started doing? I started trying to fit in. I started trying to fit in to the point where, you know, I started doing things for public favor and public opinion. That's when things started getting worse. You know why? Because every time I tried to connect with people, I wasn't leading by my own example, I was trying to be them. How many of you have spent a certain time with a group of people where no matter how close you get to them, you feel like they haven't really accepted you? Let's be honest. How many of you have been bullied in this class? Show of hands. All right, does that mean that the rest of you are the ones bullying people? All right. When I was 15 years old, things had gotten really bad. It had gotten really bad to the point where people had started actually coming up to me on a regular basis and making fun of me, going out of their way to make fun of me. I was in school, I remember the first girl that I went and asked out on a date for Valentine's, right? I've got someone who knows my mom here, so I don't want her to tell this to my mom, all right? But the first girl I went out to ask for Valentine's, I went with a rose, I went up to her, and I asked her out with her name was Serena. I said, Serena, would you go out with me? And she said, excuse me, I can't hear you. You know why? She was making fun of my height. She was like this, excuse me, I can't hear you, because I was about a foot shorter than her, right? And that was her way of giving me the answer, whether or not she'd be my Valentine's.
Too bad.
Too bad, right? But what I've learned through that whole process was that there are times when I did phenomenally well. So when I was 15 and I got rejected, I looked back to my past and I realized something. I went back to my very, very first girlfriend when I was 6 years old.
Yeah.
And this was the most tumultuous romance of my life, right? Her name was Susan, right? She was half Egyptian, half American. One of the most beautiful girls I've ever seen. Obviously, you guys are all blind, so don't judge, right? But that's me and Susan, right there in the playground. And I often used to get to third base. Now, third base, ladies and gentlemen, when you're 6 years old, is just about holding hands. That's all third base is, guys, all right? Calm down, there's nothing else going on. When I was, and I gotta tell you, I was like Drake on the field, I was just all about, you know? I was like, yeah, because you know what? Susan was the hottest on the playground at that time. Everybody wanted her, you know? And I'll show you what I mean, right? So, I was completely rad. When I hooked up with Susan, and I meant hook up in a more romantic way, right? When I hooked up with Susan, I immediately went super popular. And I realized something, my future self when I was 16 or 15, when I got rejected by Serena, I went back to my past and I asked myself, how come a 6-year-old me could do so well? What did I do with Susan that I didn't do? What did I do with Susan that I didn't do right with Serena? What is it? And I kept on coming back to something that I realized. With Susan, I was just me. I was just AJ. I was just me. Or my real name, Wajahat, right? My real name is Wajahat, and a lot of people don't know this. You know why? Because my parents did me an awesome favor by calling me Wajahat, right? And those of you who know Malay would know that Jahat, you know exactly what it means. So I'm on the field playing soccer with my friends, and what do my Malay friends say? Wah, Jahat. Right? And that's what I'm getting. And persistently, when I go back into the future and I go, what is it that's changed? I realize it's my focus on trying to be someone else instead of being me. Just being me. When I was about 16, that's what I used to look like. And I had the first lesson of my life. The reason why Serena rejected me wasn't because I was too short, wasn't because I was a loser, wasn't because I had ADHD. No, it wasn't any of that. It was because I wasn't showing her who I really was. So first lesson that I want to share with everyone here is that the biggest struggle in everyone's life, in this auditorium, outside this auditorium, is yourself. A lot of people spend their entire life struggling against the circumstances, but what they really need to do is exactly what Rehan and what Stefano were talking about earlier, is the fact that they need to spend time embracing change, facing themselves on a daily basis. And that's where I think schools, with all due respect, don't teach you something called emotional intelligence, right? How many of you guys know what EQ is? Show of hands, have you guys heard of EQ? Right? Now, there are so many people out there that I know who are striving to get into Harvard. They're giving up blood, sweat, tears, time to get into an Ivy League, right? I know people running unfortunately, I know parents who just create a living hell for their children's lives simply because they want them to be overachievers. And achieve what? Here's the reality, guys. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying academics is not important. It's very important, but you need to know why. You need to know why you're focusing on your studies right now. What are you heading to? How often do you wake up in the morning and ask yourself, why do I do what I do? Because I have to tell you, you'll come to a point in your life that you'll be at a job that pays you well, you've got a great career, but the reality is, if you drop dead, they will replace you in a week. I'm going to repeat that. If you drop dead at that fancy job at JP Morgan, do you think the world will stop? It won't stop. What's going to happen is, you'll be replaced. The world will go on, time will fly. The world stops for no one, time stops for no one. What you need to do is understand who you are as early as possible. And there's only one way you can do that. Through building your EQ, not just your IQ. If you're going to be chasing A's, you're going to be so busy running through life that you will not be able to focus on the now. And that's very important. Selfishness leads to the dark side. All of you guys, Star Wars analogies, right? How is this connected to this? Very simple. People are inherently selfish. I'm sorry to break it to you guys. People are inherently selfish. Even the ones you love most, they're selfish. I'll tell you why. Even the people that are closest to you want you to listen to them at all times. They want to share an opinion with you, they want to share an agenda with you that they hope you will listen to. The question is, why are you letting people constantly tell you what to do in life? Like Rehan said earlier, whose dream is it anyways? So every time I speak to people, I do a lot of coaching, I do a lot of talking, speaking at different places, and I speak about particularly entrepreneurship. How many of you guys want to leave here after school or university and actually want to do something of your own instead of working for a company? Show of hands. Okay, hold that thought. How many of you are taking steps towards understanding what it takes to build your own business? Anybody? Okay, now, here's the thing. How is school preparing you to be an effective entrepreneur? I can see people shaking their heads. Why is that? Why is that? Because today, the people you look up to, half the people you look up to, are people that are actually their own self-made businessmen. If you're going to be running your own businesses, here's my advice for you. When I was about 12, I used to live in a place called Tamanton. Anybody where Tamanton is? You guys know where Tamanton is, right? I grew up in Tamanton. In Tamanton, How many of you guys knew, okay, how many of you guys are fans of MCU or DC here? Marvel Comics and DC fans, right? Okay, back in the day, I know you guys know this, there were these cards that were collectibles of Wolverine, Cyclops. You used to collect these cards. They weren't playing cards, they were just collectibles, right? I used to go and use my pocket money all the time to buy these cards. And I ended up having a fancy deck of all these cards. And I remember I got this one card, which was a Wolverine hologram. Those of you who know Wolverine from the X-Men, you know, right? So I bought this card for about 40 ringgit. And I used to go out in the Padang. Padang is like the park, right? For all the guys who are not Malaysian. I used to go and hang out at the Padang. And there was this kid who was about 3 times my age, Matthias. And he saw this card, this Wolverine card. And he said to me, I want that card. And I said, okay, but you've got to buy it. And he said, yeah, okay, no problem. How much is it? And I said, 200 ringgit. And he said, 200 ringgit for this card? I said, yeah. You don't believe me? Go and check in the store. The good times back then was there was no internet to check, right? So I didn't have to worry about Sheikh Google, you know? These days you say 200, the guy's whipping out his phone. No, it's not, it's $39.90 on eBay, bro. No, that's different now, right? So back then, easy times. And he pulls out 200 bucks and he gives it to me. And I give him this card. And therein lies my first entrepreneurship. I was like, wait a second. I started thinking. I said, wait, if I can do this with Matthias, I can start doing a distribution network in my park. I can start appointing agents. People will sell my cards on my behalf with margins. Mind you, I was a kid, okay? So all these words are words I'm using now. Back then it was like, okay, I can sell cards. That's all I had. Right? And then I go and I start talking to my buddies, my best buddies, right? All Malay guys who insisted on speaking Malay with me because they love wah jahat, right? But they all spoke Malay, and I explained things in English to them, and they would all respond in Malay. And I would shake my head and it's like, this is a great idea, betul pandai, bro. Okay, all right, let me do it, all right? So I did it. We set up a network in the park, and I started generating close to about 300 ringgit a week in selling cards. And mind you, I was just a kid. I hadn't even reached my teens yet at that point. I was like 12, right? And at that point, I realized something. I realized that I'm learning more by doing this and engaging with people and selling cards than I am at school at times. I realized that. Because at school, I was getting mathematics, biology, physics, maths, whatever. But in the playground, when I did my own business, when I was just a kid, I started realizing that there's so much more that I'm learning through people, right? So, unfortunately, it brought me to a point in my life where I started sharing crazy ideas with my friends. And I gotta tell you, I went through a phase while I was being bullied where people kept on telling me, you are the craziest guy I've met. For those of you who've seen my card, my business card, you can see that, you can testify that, right? I do things very differently. I do things crazily only because I know it captures your attention, captures your heart. And that's what you need to do. You need to go out there and try new things. I was telling this earlier during the break as well. If you've got a dream, the first thing you need to do is figure out if you're good at it. I gotta tell you guys, I had a dream of being a dancer. And then I danced. People died. When people died, I realized, you know what? Maybe that dream, not so good. Put it away, put it away. Nobody wants to see you dance, AJ, right? That's how the dream died. I gotta tell you guys, let's be a bit realistic. If you've got a dream, make sure you're bloody good at it. And then go out there. Innovation equals an idea, a passion, plus the ability to commercialize it. If your passion is something that you can't commercialize, I'm sorry. Wake up call, guys. You're not living in the real world. Being an entrepreneur means understanding that you want to create an idea, you need to be able to take it to market. So, don't let anybody tell you it's crazy. Figure out the plan. That's my sister, right? My sister used to stay in Malaysia for a very long time. And she about 6 years ago left, 6, 7 years ago. I miss her very much. She's still, she's in touch with me. But when I was in my mid-20s, I had reached a point in my life where I was earning more money than my father. And one day my father sat me down and said, son, you're changing. You're getting to become arrogant. Because I was earning more money than he was, I was driving better cars than he was, and I was dating, well no, nobody's more attractive than mom. You know? And my father sat me down and he said, son, you're changing, and I'm worried about you. And I regret what I said after that. I regret it. You know what I told my dad? I was about 26, and I told my dad, Dad, you're just saying this because you're jealous that I'm earning more money than you are, even when you're close to the end of your career. And I'll still remember, my dad just went quiet, got up, and left the table. Barely a year later, after that happened, my sister told me something that changed my life. It really did. She told me, AJ, or she calls me Waju, right? She said, how often do you leave people better than how you found them? When I meet someone, I make it a point now to ensure that when they leave that conversation from me, they feel better about themselves. You need to emit energy. You need to be the example that you want other people to follow. If people meet you and they feel good about themselves, you're doing the right thing. So people are inherently selfish, yes, but you have to be selfless in order to change the world. All in all, you guys know the concept of YOLO, right? Okay. I always share this wherever I go, right? The song is the song, but it's really important that you take this in, because people have to have more than just living in the moment. They need to be focused on doing something bigger than themselves. So I'm going to leave this slide with you guys. Thank you very much.